Our honored guest is now going to come up and speak. And so it's my honor to be his nephew. It is my honor to introduce him for his 100th birthday. And so I won't go on any further. It is my honor to introduce to you our guest of honor, Mr. Ken Brady.
Made it. Thank you. I can't greet each and every one of you. Time does not allow. So, but I want to thank all of you for being here today. When my mother was ready to have me born, I told her that I wanted to be born on a day that would make my 100th birthday fall on a Saturday. And she complied. Today is my birthday. So, I have a lot of little stories to tell you. A number of times I've been asked, to what do you contribute your longevity to? Well, I think there are three things that really contribute. I have my faith and trust in Jesus, and I've had a number of life-saving situations in my life. And I'll tell you about two of them when I get to my military. And so I figure that really provided support for my longevity. The second is my health. I've had good health care over the years, and you met Dr. Atkinson a few minutes ago, and I invited him because I wanted to actually pay tribute to my good health care. So wherever Dr. Atkinson is sitting, thank you, Doctor. The last part that I contribute my longevity to is my wife and I, she passed away 5 years ago last Saturday. We were married for 72 years, and for 72 years outside of the time I was in the military, so roughly for 72 years, I ate her good, nutritious cooking. So I attribute her good cooking to my longevity. So now you know why I made it to 300 years. Oh, by the way, I promised someone that I would be finished talking by midnight, so bear with me. My father passed away in 1929, and when he passed away, he left my mother with 6 young children, and there was no way my mother could care for 6 young children. My father's job moved him at times, and he would not purchase a home when he moved, so he would rent. So when he passed away, my mother had no home. She lost his income. She had no income to pay rent. She was in dire straits with 6 children. There was no Social Security to help widows in those days. My mother never worked outside the home. She was a housewife for all of her working years. And in 1929, the start of the 1930s Depression started. So even if she had wanted to find a job, there was no way, with no experience, that she could get a job that would support 6 children. Somehow, she was able to find the Hershey Industrial School. And at the time, Mr. Hershey, who founded the Hershey Industrial School, incidentally, I'll say a few minutes about him. He and his wife decided on starting a home. And she had some health problems, and she could never have any children. So that's why they decided to start the Hershey Industrial School for boys who were in dire need of a home. And somehow my mother found out about the Hershey Industrial School, and Mr. Hershey at the time was only taking in boys in Pennsylvania. but for some reason he had pity, and he took my two brothers and me into the Hershey Industrial School. That became my home then for 11 years, and up through high school. In September of 1939, Germany invaded Poland and started what became World War II. And England and France declared war on Germany, and Germany defeated France very quickly. But what that did in the United States was start rumors that the United States was going to get into the war. And it also started rumors that the United States was going to have a military draft to support their part in the war. Well, when I graduated from high school in June of 1940, these rumors were going very strong. And I had to make a decision at the time. If I went into college, I knew that the draft was going to start and I would have education interrupted. And the other choice was to seek a job. Well, it turns out I made a very good decision, as you'll hear in a few minutes. I decided, knowing that the draft was coming, I would get a job and just wait for the draft to be drafted. So I got a job at the Glenn Martin Company that was manufacturing warplanes for England and the United States. Well, it turned out that in September of 1940, the draft started. Well, I was fortunate. I got a number of deferments because of working in the Glenn Martin Company defense plant, making the warplanes. So you can see the decision I made out of high school started to pay dividends. I got deferments where a lot of men being drafted went right into the military war. So when on December the 7th, 1941, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, and the United States immediately declared war on Japan. Well, when Japan was into the war, Germany and Japan were partners, so Germany declared war on the United States. So now the United States was finally in the war that the rumors kept saying they would get into. Well, when they got into the war, the decision had to be made which country to defeat first, Japan or Germany. They're like two separate wars. So the decision was made to defeat Germany first. So when that decision was made, the draft really started picking up. And most men then being drafted were drafted into the Army infantry to be trained as foot soldiers for the invasion. The invasion would be from England across the English Channel onto the beaches of France. So in March, with the building up for the invasion in March of 1943, I lost my deferment and I got my draft notice. My draft notice told me to be at the B&O Railroad Station on a certain date at a certain time, and a military train would arrive from states up north. And when the train arrived on schedule, I got on the train, and we went I was wondering how long the trip would be, where the train would go. So I found a seat, and the trip was a very long trip of 12 miles to Fort Meade. At Fort Meade, we were all ordered off the train. And the first thing done at Fort Meade then was we were given a physical. And if you failed the physical, you were sent back home. If you passed the physical, you went into the next room. In the next room, you found out what branch of the military you would be assigned to. Since you had no choice, anybody drafted could not choose the branch of service. You were told what you would do. So in the next room then, most of the men in that room were being told they would be in the Army infantry for the invasion of France. And it was very well known that any invasion would cause very high casualties. Many soldiers would never make it to the beaches. So I really hoped that I would not be told I would be in the infantry. When they got to me, they told me that I would be in the Army Air Corps. So here was another benefit from the decision I made at high school to seek employment instead of going to college. If I had not gone into work at Glen Martin Company, the chances are that day I would have been in the Army Infantry. But I noticed on my discharge it mentions the Glen Martin Company. So I'm sure my career in the Army then was based on working at the Glen Martin Company. So you can see that decision really helped me in later life. So being assigned to the Army Air Corps, I was on a troop train, again wondering where in the world we were going. How long would the trip be? Well, the train ended up in Miami, Florida. And when in Miami, we all got off the train, we put on buses, and we bussed over to Miami Beach. Miami Beach, almost all of the hotels in Miami Beach, the Army Air Corps had taken over. So hotels became Army barracks. They took over most of the restaurants. Restaurants became mess halls. And they took over golf courses, so the grounds could be used to train basic training of the men in the Army Air Corps. So at the end of the basic training came another life-saving event in my life. The first one was that room in Fort Meade getting assigned to the Army Air Corps. So in the Air Corps, at the end of basic training, the United States had sent hundreds and hundreds of bombers over to England to bomb France and Germany to prepare for the invasion. The problem was a lot of these bombers were being shot down, and there were 10 men on each bomber. So at the end of basic training, you found out whether you were going to be assigned to a bomber crew or what else. And many of the men were being assigned to these bomber crews. And when they got to me, they told me I would be an airplane mechanic. Again, benefiting from my working at the Glen Martin Company. So you can see how one decision really made a difference in my life. So at the end of the war, oh, by the way, there were many casualties, over 4,000 on the first day of the invasion, 4,000 military casualties. And I'm saying military because a lot of the soldiers were on ships going across the English Channel, and German military artillery was hitting the Navy ships. So there were sailors killed, plus Army men who never reached the beach. On that first day of the invasion, there were a little under 5,000 casualties. There were a little under 10,000, 9,000 some seriously injured. So you can see how fortunate I was in how I was assigned in the Army Air Corps and assigned to be a mechanic and not a member of the crew. At the end of the war, the GI Bill of Rights took over. The GI Bill of Rights had a lot of benefits to returning veterans. One of the benefits was free college education. So now, having gone to work instead of college, I was free for education. During the war, I became very interested in electronics. And so I decided to go to school and study electronics. And this was, again, a very good decision. I got a job at the Westinghouse Defense Center here in Baltimore at the airport. They had a number of electronics projects going. I was assigned to a radar system that was being manufactured for a Navy plane being manufactured by Douglas Aircraft in California. And after being on the program for some period of time, my top manager asked me one day to go to California for 6 weeks and teach Douglas Aircraft employees how to test the radar. So I took off for California for 6 weeks, leaving my family here alone. And Keith at the time was only months old. When the radar got into an airplane and the airplane was sold to a Navy inspector and accepted, the airplane then was flown to the Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, Florida. When I got back to Westinghouse from my 6 weeks, my top manager again asked me, will you now go to Jacksonville Air Station and teach Navy people how to test the radar? So now I have 6 more weeks away. That time I took my family with me. And Keith, my son here, was only 9 months old for that. So while I was in Jacksonville, the Defense Center opened up a new plant a few miles from the airport here. That new plant was to manufacture torpedoes for Navy submarines. So while I was in Florida, my top manager, he was transferred to the new plant. When I got back from a 6 weeks in Florida, my top manager asked me if I would transfer to the new plant with him. So I decided to go. So now I'm benefiting again from a top manager for some reason selecting me. At the new plant then, with the making torpedoes, the torpedoes eventually would end up at the Navy submarine base in Key West, Florida. When I got into the new plant, my top manager asked me to move into management. So I started to make management positions. And eventually I moved up in the new plant into middle management. And in middle management, one of the departments I had was inspection. And I knew nothing about inspection, so I thought I better find out what inspection's all about. So I joined the American Society for Quality that had an inspection division. And I became active in the inspection division, as you'll hear in a few moments. So while I was doing all of that, my top manager, who asked me to transfer, he was transferred to Westinghouse headquarters, transferred to Pittsburgh. So now I had my second top manager. And after some period of time, my new top manager asked me to take a new assignment. And the new assignment was to be quality manager for the torpedo program. So now I would be dealing with a product and not with people. So one day, he asked me if I would go to the submarine base in Key West, Florida for a week. And when I inquired why go, he said, I want you to go down and do public relations for Westinghouse. Let everybody know that you meet. Let them know you're from Westinghouse and let them know you're the quality manager on the torpedo program. So I flew down on a Sunday to Key West, and Monday morning I started making my rounds and talking to people. And I met one gentleman who told me that he was the commander of a submarine. And when I told him I was from Westinghouse and the quality manager of the torpedo program, he said, I'm taking my submarine out into the Caribbean tomorrow to test fire some Westinghouse torpedoes. And when they test fire, they have a certain object on them, they come back up and float. Anyway, he said, I'm taking my submarine out into the Caribbean tomorrow to fire some torpedoes. He said, would you like to go along? I said, oh yeah, I'll go along. He said, the submarine leaves the pier at 5 a.m. So I was really up early Tuesday morning to be on that submarine at 5 a.m. So we took off at 5, we stayed on the surface out into the Caribbean somewhere. Somewhere in the Caribbean, the submarine dove. And we were down under all day, and he allowed me to watch the firing of Westinghouse torpedoes. At the end of the day, when all the torpedoes were fired, the submarine came back up to the surface, and we headed back to Key West. And he invited me to be back up in the conning tower with him, which was a beautiful view if you've ever been in the conning tower of a submarine, because you can look all around. It was a wonderful trip. At the end of the week, when I was ready to leave, the Navy gave me a citation, which is on a copy on the table in the back of the room. Incidentally, I have a lot of memorabilia back there if you haven't seen it yet. Anyway, they gave me a citation making me an honorary submariner on the U.S. Navy. So that's back there.